Hey there guys and gals, just wanted to get back in here and show off some of the block mapping functions and the abilities to edit and change boundaries that might make them easier for you in your operation to keep track of. So if you'd watched my other video about downloading maps out of Surety, I'm going to be using the same boundary today to show you how to edit it and make subtractions from a boundary to allow you to look at it in a little different light and to be able to use those old shape files and the drawing tool to map these waterways very easily and exclude some boundaries in this main boundary. So right now we're looking at the management boundary. That's always going to be your pink boundary. And what I want to do here is get rid of my waterways and get rid of these exclusions that I have in this field already. This is really pretty simple to do, and bear with me and I'll show you how this all works. It'll all come together in a little bit. So what I want to start with is the polygon tool, and I want to select this entire waterway. I'm going to click here, go outside of it, zoom out, and go back to the base of it, back to the outlet, zoom in, make sure that I'm getting the whole thing, and double click, and I want to include that boundary. Okay, and there it capped the end of that, and it removed that from my boundary. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with this one. Zoom in just a little bit closer so I've got more detail to work with. Too far, there we go. Vertex still has a little bit of stage fright, so I'll have to give her a little bit of credit there. Go back to my polygon tool, click just outside of that boundary, and go ahead and come all the way down here to where I want that to be. Stretch it across and follow that same boundary. I know that my trees go down here just a little bit, and come back in, get the rest of that waterway in there, and then make sure that the whole thing is encompassed. I definitely don't want to save it out here, but I want to save it here. Double click, include it, and that's going to subtract my waterway out of there. Zoom out, and what I'm going to do is leave this one in for the sake of argument to show you another principle later. So from here I'm going to save this management boundary, and what I want to do is give it the same name. The date is sufficient for me to keep track of these changes, and I'm just going to name it this Surety How-To field again. What I want to do is select and click and select that whole thing, hit Control C as in cat, click Save again, click in the name field and hit Control V as in Victor, and that will paste it. The name has to be unique and has to have something different to it. You can add a 1, a 2, a 3 to it, or something that's very simple that Kyle Barden in Texas showed me is if you just put a space bar, one space after it, or if you've edited it a couple times, put more than one space, but just put a space behind it and then hit save, and it'll allow you to save that because it considers that to be a unique boundary. So this is saved successfully. I'm going to go ahead and hit close. There is a button there within the drawing tool on the main boundary that does allow you to start editing that boundary in there, but I want to go all the way back out to my blocks, and so that I can upload a block to this field by shapefile. Alright, so click Add a Block, It's going to require a name for it. Excuse me. Alright, leave it the same commodity and click Save. Okay, and there's my test. So I'm going to open this up and view the dashboard for this block. Go to the boundary and create a boundary. What I'm going to do here is upload the same main boundary with the waterways included that I did for the management boundary. So there they come. Click and drag that over. Click and drag these guys into here and hit upload. So now what it's going to do is save these as a block inside of my management boundary. Let's take a look at what that looks like. Alright, so those of you who are around for the first boundary test, you remember these guys, these old property lines. What we're going to do is try to get rid of those really quick. So a trick that I noticed here, and that may become helpful for you guys working with the surety to download your maps with these old property lines, if you'll notice, if I click in the edit mode and I click on one of those bubbles and move it over into this smaller boundary, so out of the boundary on the left and into the boundary on the right, drop it, it will include that side of that field. So let me show you that again here. So again, here's my larger boundary. I'm going to click on it, drag it away and show you the gap between them, and drag it into this other boundary that I want to absorb. Let go of my mouse and it absorbs it. Pretty cool stuff, right? Okay, so I'm going to go back to my navigate function, and if you'll notice here, these two boundaries are the ones that we removed, right? And you can kind of see it there. Let me zoom in for a better look. There's the management boundary underneath of my block boundary, and you can also see it here below this. This is also my hard management boundary, and then my waterway or my block boundaries here. So if you remember, I've also got that management boundary underneath of this waterway. If we'll zoom in here and look at that, so that boundary is still underneath of this boundary, but I'm going to go ahead and leave it there for right now so I can show you guys something. From here I want to save this. I know I've got my field, my planted area that I want to plant as a block, so that's perfect, but I want to be able to record my waterways as a separate boundary so I can go and spread fertilizer on them later and get a work order for them in an actual acres of how many acres of chemical I'm going to need or fertilizer I'm going to need. So I'm going to go ahead and save this guy. Hit close, and I'm going to go back out and create a boundary for my waterways. So from here I want to go all the way back out to the block level, and so I've got my main block, and now I'm going to create another block and I'm going to label it waterways. Alright, I'm going to change it to 1 acre. I'm going to change my commodity to brome. Now, everyone may find other uses for this tool, and I know a lot of guys don't necessarily have waterways and things like that. However, kind of showing off the capability of this tool to autofill is where I'm really headed. So I'm going to go ahead and open my waterways field, go to my boundary, create a new boundary, and not select the shape file upload. I just want to do the manual draw here. Hit next, open this guy up, and the other blocks that I have in here are saved as yellow boundaries, and you can see them here. And so what I can do with this, so right now I can view my other boundaries, but I'm going to create a new block. So right now I can see my block boundary here, my management boundary there, but what I want to do now is to click inside of this and drag across and essentially encompass my waterway, the gap between this block. And so what I'm going to do now is double click on my mouse now that I have the entire waterway covered, and it will populate the interior, which is my waterway, and we can see that that's 3.5 acres or 3.3 acres. Now I'm going to very quickly go through it and do the same thing on this middle boundary. Just got to make sure that I'm encompassing the entirety of that boundary. This is kind of a fast and dirty version, but we're getting it done. So there you go. So almost 7 acres for this waterway. Now I told you I left behind that other waterway for conversation's sake. So that management boundary is still saved below this. If I go in and create my boundary above this for a block, so now I've got the entire boundary covered, and I double click, nothing happens because that management boundary is still underneath of there. If I would have gotten rid of the management boundary that was behind it and then tried it just like I did on the other waterways, it would have worked, and I still may do that for the sake of our operation. From here, you can just hit save and it'll save those boundaries inside of there. Just kind of a cool way to quickly map your waterways, or even tree rows if you're wondering how big those are. Some folks will map prairie dog damage and different things, and really if you're wanting to find out how many acres are there and give it a name and treat it separately, organize it, you've got the ability to do it. I hope this helped, and let me know if you have any questions, and again, don't forget to save.